Good morning. Market Day Report is on the air as we start trading in about 15 minutes. But what about the overnight session? Where did we go? Let's start here with corn. Corn market back in the red now. Corn settled yesterday, finishing that session off in higher territory as it broke a three-day losing streak. But that was during the day. Overnight lowered down a penny and 3/4, 4.10 and a half. And so that's corn. What about soybeans? Well, soybeans yesterday falling for the fourth consecutive day. Overnight down a penny and a half, with November below that $10 level. And for the wheat market, overnight trade, Chicago was lower across the board. Kansas City futures were higher, and then spring wheat contracts in the red. What about the cotton market? Well, yesterday in lower territory, but overnight December back up 24 at 67.74. Well, we get weekly export sales from USDA, and helping us break that down in the markets, Brian Hoops, Midwest Market Solutions. I guess before the export sales, did we have a flash sale?
We had 4 flash sales this morning, Tony, so it was a pretty active morning for our export community. 3 of those sales were corn, and 1 was hard red wheat to Nigeria. So it was about 100,000 metric tons of hard red wheat sold, and then 100,000 corn to Colombia, another 140 to South Korea, and then 136,000 to an unknown destination. So we had some very strong sales. You combine that with pretty decent weekly export sales, and you can see our profile for at least selling corn anyway is starting to improve. Now, we haven't seen much in the way of flash sales for soybeans, and notably absent is China. They are absent all last year, and they're starting off this marketing season being completely absent as well of buying anything related to the United States. So there was some comments that Treasury Secretary Bessent indicated we're close to an agreement with China, and we have made several agreements here recently with a lot of countries. But again, not a lot of details are coming out of those agreements. And most notably, China has not reached an agreement. Mexico, Canada have not reached agreements with the U.S. And so those are some of the major countries, when we have these deadlines approaching here soon, that the trade will be closely watching, is wanting to reach some agreements from these major buyers that have not done that yet. So exports starting to improve a little bit, but then you're offset by the weather. Very good growing conditions, nearly ideal into early parts of August, and that has really pressured corn and soybeans. We hit fresh new lows, closed below technical support yesterday in November beans, and so now you have next downside support at about 971.5 for November soybeans in the 407.5 area on December corn.
All right, Brian, weekly export sales, and we're coming to the end of the marketing year for most of our row crops. The exception there is wheat. So I'm adding old crop and new crop, and I got corn at 1.2 million metric tons, down 7% from adding those two numbers together from the previous week. Soybeans, 779,000 metric tons, up 90% from the previous week. Again, adding old crop and new crop. I don't know if that's a smart thing to do. Wheat was down 17%, and then cotton off 35% on old crop and new crop. We'll take a quick break. We'll talk more about exports, but proteins. Market Day Report continues in a moment. We closed higher yesterday with both live and feeder cattle, so that's now 4 consecutive days higher. We didn't trade overnight. We don't trade the livestock futures overnight. So here's how we settled yesterday. Live cattle, August contract, $232.95, up $322. Also $322 higher on the October at $229.67. How about the feeders? Look at this September. It hit $340.60 and then back down to $340.22, up $315. And then the hogs settling higher as well, exception that front month August, but October gained a little over $0.50 to $89.30. Let's go back to Springfield, Missouri. President, Midwest Market Solutions, Brian Hoops. Brian, thoughts here?
Well, August cattle have made contract highs 12 out of the last 17 sessions. They're bid higher again this morning, so we should see some strength at least early on. Now, it is the last trading day of the month, and a lot of times we have a tendency to see some profit taking, and the funds have been very strong buyers all this month, so we may see some sort of a dip today on that profit taking tied to the end of the month and paying out those bonuses. But other than that, it's hard to try and pick a top in this market. Now, the cash trade started to develop earlier this week. We saw a little bit more trade, 1,000 head in the Southern Plains yesterday in Kansas, about 335. That's $2 to $3 better than the bulk of last week's trade. And so you can see the futures still have a little work to do to catch up to that cash markets. Our export sales weren't anything real great, but the consumer demand has been pretty strong here for these markets. And we've heard reports from some of these packers that yes, they're losing money on the cattle, but they're making it on turkey and pork and chickens, and they're making money overseas, so they can withstand. Some of these bigger producers can withstand to have some losses at this time frame just to stay open and keep their kills running. So it's a strong market, and producers, there's some warning flags out here with lower box beef, but you still have to manage your risk, and there's still a lot of risk to the upside as their supplies just undoubtedly are going to remain tight here for quite some time.
Yeah, weekly export sales for beef down 49% week over week, so a bit disappointing. By the way, this is a lag measure, so market has a pretty good idea of what's already here. But for pork, was it 85%? It was a pretty sizable jump from the previous week on pork at 39,500 metric tons. So we'll watch the hog market. Any final thoughts here?
Well, I know you're always good, Tony, about asking us different trivia of what today means, and I don't expect you to know this, but R.J. O'Brien's last day as its independent clearing firm, they merged with StoneX as of the close of business tonight.
Yeah, that's exactly right. A couple of names. That R.J. O'Brien name's been around for years. So, yeah.
1914 actually is when they started. So they've been around a long time.
Wow. Well, thanks for the insight on that. Always a wealth of information. Brian Hoops, President, Midwest Market Solutions.